is Breaking Down Security, and I am Brian Brady. Welcome back, listener. Thank you for joining us and allowing us to be in your earballs as usual on a weekly basis for over a year and a half now. Hello, Mr. Boettcher. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Not doing too bad. We were talking about work for the podcast, and I'm hoping if we go short this week on this week's topic, we'll be able to talk about it.
You got some complaints?
I got some airing of grievances straight up. Yeah.
Well, let's hope this takes a really long time.
Yeah. So we've invited back one of the guest hosts while Mr. Boettcher was gone, Megan Wu. You know her better as Ms. Totenkopf on the Twitters. How you doing, Megan? What's going on?
Good. Happy to be home.
Happy to be home. Where were you this week?
Dallas. Going to be going back there for the next 2 weeks as well.
Ooh. Wait.
Yeah, that's my feelings about it.
So you're flying back and forth for 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I fly out Sunday. I came back today, and I fly out Sunday.
Oh my.
So if you're a security consultant, you generally aren't sent somewhere for 3 weeks at a time. You get to come home on weekends, right? No.
Right. So yeah, I usually don't stay for the whole weekend because I don't think the husband would be okay with that.
Okay. So we wanted to have you on to discuss, all of us, kind of a roundtable discussion on compliance and checkbox security in this case. So we know that you as a consultant are working in the trenches, and wanted to get your opinion on how you view compliance in a business-like environment.
Cool. Let's do it.
Sweet. All right. Well, Mr. Boettcher's made this show notes thing look really super fancy, so I appreciate that, sir. Why don't you get started, Mr. Boettcher, and we'll go from there.
Well, the podcast is called Checkbox Security. What do we mean by checkbox security? Well, it's a term used by some people that we may or may not know to kind of define compliance in a I don't know whether it's a derogatory way. I'm not too sure. I haven't really thought about it in depth. Checkbox security, meaning you have to check the box for certain items or all the items to meet compliance standards. So once you gain a certain level of security, you can check that box because you're compliant.
Okay. All right. So, Megan, you must have had to deal with a lot of different compliance measures where you go as a consultant. I mean, you've probably dealt with hospitals, people who have cloud-based assets. I mean, do you think that the prevailing opinion is compliance is just lesser security, and that you should try to strive to be more secure than you are just compliant? Is that something that you agree with?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a really good basis, but it shouldn't be the foundation for your entire security program. It should just be a part of it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had to deal with the person that spawned that checkbox security term with Mr. Boettcher. Brings a little smile to my face when I remember him. I found it odd because we were trying to go for PCI compliance, which is the great evil in credit card processing, and he just wanted to do the bare minimum. And when I was in the Navy, bare minimum was something you didn't strive for. You always tried to be overachiever. You always tried to do more than what was necessary. And I found that once you became compliant, it was going to be hard to get the compliance guys help because he wouldn't see the need to go beyond compliance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, his job was done. We're compliant, so I just got to keep us compliant.
Yeah. Yeah, you had to stay in a specific level of compliance, or a non-security in this case. So if you wanted to start, I don't know, maybe we could have an example of something that does for compliance, and then how we would go further than that for security. I'm thinking patch management for one. You have a specific level of patching that you have to do, and you could be more proactive about it as being security. But to be compliant, you just have to make sure that everything is patched up to the necessary level. Am I wrong in thinking that, or is there something else, a better example?
Yeah, that I can see where you're going with that, but also, like, just to play devil's advocate though, how many people would actually do patching on a regular basis if it wasn't mandated by compliance?
Well,
The good guys would.
Right, but how many of them or us, if you self-identify as one of the good guys, are there?
it's true. I mean, you would patch if it added additional functionality to a program, like if it added an additional widget, or if you got performance gains out of it. I could see why a company that isn't normally patching would do so. Or if it fixed an existing bug that they wanted to fix. Instead of it being bad guys hacked X using this vulnerability, you need to patch this. Well, that doesn't really give us a 10% performance boost, or worse. It would actually reduce our performance, so we don't want to do that. So what are some of the other problems we have with compliance? I mean, other than just not being level of security, is it the audit process that's always a pain in the butt, or is it not technical enough? I mean, do we need to be more technical in our compliance measurements?
Well, to speak about the audit process, I think how painful an audit is depends largely on your auditor, right? Because, so for example, I would sometimes, when I was in my last job, I would be sent out to help another coworker who was doing like a PCI engagement. For example, once I was sent out to help him, even though we went to the same training class, took the test at the exact same time, and it was months after that, I was asked to go assist, got out there, and the dude was struggling, the customer was frustrated. So it ended up just being like a personality mismatch.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was just like, listen, I only need to actually talk to you for this, and this. Show me these reports and these logs, and we're good for this part.
Yeah.
So maybe it's like an unclear communication of expectations or what's needed. So they feel like the customer might feel like they have to run around at the last minute to get information, or schedule all of these stupidly long meetings to answer all the interview questions.
Yeah.
Not sure. I've never been on the customer side, so I'd be interested to hear what either of you guys have to say about that.
Well, when me and Mr. Boettcher were doing it, one of the things that we always try to do is drown the auditors in paper.
Yes.
That's after I left working with Mr. Boettcher and I came to this current position. We tried doing that with our auditor, and all that did was cause longer meetings because they didn't understand the paperwork we were giving them. And they had a ton of questions about the format, and we gave them, every possible report under the sun. And it actually caused more issues than it should have. So I'm starting to move back towards the, ask the auditor what they want and just give them what they need. And then if they are missing things, then we only have to have a couple of meetings to say, okay, what do we need left, instead of you guys gave me 8,000 pages of stuff. I'm never going to be able to get back to you in a timely manner.
Well, yeah. I mean, what the auditor's there to do is to help you get more secure. They're acting as an agent of your customer, your client, to certify that you meet a certain level of security. I mean, that's their job. So they want you to become more secure by adhering to this framework. And most auditors are willing to work with you, like say if you're lacking in some area, give you the opportunity to, well, after they point that out, to accelerate in that area. And they'll offer suggestions or whatever on what you need to do minimally to meet that requirement. Let's say you can't go 100%. Maybe we can take the top things that you need in that area and meet those. And then perhaps next year the guy comes back and he knows, okay, we met these things, but you were lacking in these others, which are, closely related and not as important as the ones you did solve. So let's see how you improved over time.
Mm-hmm.
So in that respect, compliance would be a good thing, right? So what are some other ways that compliance can be good for your organization?
Well, it shows you where you don't have any controls at all. I mean, if you're following any kind of maturity model like CMMI or I forget what the other ones is. If you go in and you find you're not logging anything, and you're level 0 on the maturity model, having the auditor point that out is a way to help jumpstart some improvement projects you may have been wanting. You may also find out that once you're digging into a broom closet, figuratively speaking, that you may not have touched in months, and you're like, oh yeah, we probably need to update that, or oh yeah, we've got this issue here that we didn't even know about. So auditors can be a good way to help you shake loose some cobwebs and look inside some old dark corners of your company and your infrastructure, and help you suss out what's wrong.
Well, it also can not only help you suss out what's wrong, but kind of force the company to meet a certain level of standard, right? As a single contributor, you may not have the teeth in your organization to force change, but compliance brings that in a lot of cases, right? You may not have firewalls at all. Compliance says you have to have them. So there's your justification right there to get those firewalls.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know a lot of customers who are like, if you find anything out of compliance with the requirements, shoot me a high importance email immediately and we'll hop in a meeting and it'll get fixed, because otherwise, if it's not called out, it'll kind of get brushed under the rug.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing about compliance is, it can be a mover of change. It can help you find ways of gaining funding for little pet projects that you need. Like if you definitely need if you need a new WAF, or if you need new infrastructure, new firewalls, new switches, and things like that. Not being able to do certain things like audits of changes, or let's say you need to enable SSH on your Cisco switches, and your iOS versions on your Cisco is old enough that it doesn't support that, or doesn't support a secure version of SSH. You could use that as a driver for, hey, we need to upgrade our security, we need to upgrade the security features on these routers. We need to either buy new iOS, or, oh, these are out of date for support, so we've got to replace those, that kind of thing. Plus, I also find that compliance can be a driver for getting new business. A lot of things that we're doing right now in my company are because clients are asking us if we're compliant with such and such framework. And if we're compliant with such and such framework, we now become a contender for that business. not just for, not our competitors so much, but, if we're, EU safe harbor, for instance, that is a big selling point in the European Union. Whereas if we weren't EU safe harbor, maybe we'll go over and talk to your competitor because we know they are. So that's a way that you can work with management to help them understand that, in fact, compliance and even being beyond compliant and even more secure is a business driver or a moneymaker in this case.
Yeah. You meet that minimum standard, and that's kind of an assurance to your potential customers that, okay, they kind of take this seriously. They have audits, at least they do the necessary things in order to achieve that certification. So it does bring some credence and potential business. Yeah.
Yeah. So Megan, when you were a consultant for doing pre-audits, or were you actually a consultant who came in and did the audits?
Both. So what I would do is kind of whatever they wanted us to do, right, within reason. So
Yeah.
I did lots of PCI, HIPAA. I did a SOX audit, and it was like the worst thing ever because it was like key reports and stuff, and I was like, that's cool. I'll stick with PCI.
So
but
SOX is in Sarbanes-Oxley, or is it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yep, Sarbanes-Oxley. And then one of our banking customers had a separate vendor vetting process where, in order to do business as a vendor of this bank, you had to go through this kind of like audit of like a very specific separate audit that this bank came up with before they would even talk to them. They'd be like, okay, well, we'll consider your proposal, but first, here, talk to our auditors.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of cool that they were proactive about who they did business with, right?
Yeah.
Also did a bunch of gap assessments, so like PCI gap assessments, HIPAA as well. Again,
So
and
gap
risk assessments.
Risk. Okay. So with you mentioned PCI there. PCI is one of those. Well, at least for us, it was. PCI is kind of a moment in time kind of thing where the minute you get the rock, you're considered compliant. And from what I understand, if you make any kind of changes or requirements, or you upgrade your infrastructure or something, you're no longer considered compliant according to the PCI Council. That's what I understood, right? So that, for me, PCI kind of sucks in that respect because it is kind of a point in time thing.
Well, I don't think according to the PCI Council that you're non-compliant. I mean, it lasts for a year. Once you become compliant, yeah, if you make any changes at all, you have to, make sure that change is a compliant, or whatever you changed is compliant within of itself. But I think the point in time thing came from what was it, the data breach report that came out? Was that the Verizon thing where it said that no one was compliant at the time of the breach? In other words, if they had an assessment that day performed at that point in time, they wouldn't have been compliant.
Right. And a huge reason for that. So I can speak from my experience. When I get on site, they would hand me a stack of evidence that I would have to go through and look at, but they would never give me access to like their actual like vulnerability scanner, for example, to see the clean scan results or the current scan results. They only have to produce the one clean quarterly scan.
Yeah. Mr. Boettcher, what about that one clean quarterly scan?
I can't see it, but I bet he's making obscene gestures right now.
Oh, I know.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, buddy, I remember that, man. That was awful having to. under the gun, last day before the quarter, and you're putting in about 25 tickets to get changes done. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So what's this? It says compliance trumps security. Why does compliance trump security in many cases, Mr. Boettcher? Is it because it's the driver, right? Compliance is people want to be compliant because it looks good to be that. There's no, hey, we're secure. There's nothing fancy there. There's no industry leader saying, hey, you're secure. There are industry leaders saying, hey, you're SOX compliant, or hey, you're PCI compliant.
Right. Let's say you have two things that could be done, right? One is a compliance issue and one is a security issue.
Yeah.
Well, if you had to choose between the two, the compliance issue would always win, whether it's writing a process document as opposed to getting an endpoint security solution, right?
Yeah.
The compliance document is going to win out. All your time has to be spent on security. So it almost becomes a substitute for a security strategy, right? In a lot of organizations. So you can have a great security strategy in your head or documented somewhere, but if it doesn't do anything for compliance, and we can give some examples of that, you may not have the green light to go implement that strategy.
Sure.
Right. And what's weird to see is that security and compliance usually go at each other, when in reality, if your programs were written up and practiced well enough, it could kind of be like a symbiotic relationship where one helps the other out.
Well,
instead of being at odds.
Where I work, it always seems like security is always helping compliance out because there aren't enough compliance people, because they do believe that security, in this case, I work for the compliance guy, which is sad. He's a great guy. I like him. He's not the guy I used to work with at the other place with Mr. Boettcher. But he bristles when I call them compliance weasels or audit weasels, because he used to be an audit guy for one of the big four. So he's like, they're not audit weasels. They're there for a job. They have a job. And I was like, ooh, sorry about that, man. So, yeah, I don't know. It just seems like maybe we're bitter. Are we bitter? Are InfoSec people bitter, or security?
What?
Because it seems like compliance is the happy, the good boy, and security is the redheaded stepchild in the corner.
We're kind of like the big brothers and sisters, whereas compliance is like the little brother and sister getting spoiled during Christmas. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's actually more apropos. Yeah.
That's better. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Compliance got a puppy, and I got
I got a ferret.
ferret's pretty cool.
Well, they smell, goes with your audit weasel thing.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I'm trying to help you out.
Very nice. Very nice. So what's this? Good security ideas again shut down. Well, yeah, we've already kind of talked about that. The compliance guy, or you get that. I think it's because compliance gets more attention. So again, like the younger brother or whatever, and it's hard to justify those things. But I would argue with them that, okay, yeah, we're doing this one thing, and a lot of times what you're going to see is, oh, we need XYZ dollars to upgrade this widget to be compliant. Well, then you can't go back in 6 months after you've made your compliance requirements and go, we want widget Y to go, to do this. And they're like, well, we already gave you money to do, the one thing. Why do we need it now to do this? Well, we want to be secure. Well, we don't need to. We just spent $100,000 upgrading it to be compliant. Why do we need to be more secure? So yeah, I get that. Maybe if we convince the compliance people that it needs to get to, our level, we won't have to reach into the cookie jar twice. Is there a way we can do that? It's already bad enough that we have podcasts and people who say, well, you need to talk to management in their terms? Do we need to speak to compliance people in their terms, and how do we do that? Well, I mean, what do we say to the compliance people to make, to bring them to our side, if you will?
I don't know. I mean, I think compliance, those who work in the compliance side want to be, I mean, they strive to be more secure, and that's why they do what they do.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like the incentive to go beyond compliance isn't there in a lot of cases. I mean, obviously there are exceptions, but what is the incentive to go beyond compliance if that's all you need?
True. Well, I mean, is it a culture thing? Do we all?
Yes, exactly. It's a culture thing, and it comes from management. Ultimately, management has to be on board with going beyond compliance, and if they're not, then it's going to be very hard to get, at a level to where you would like it as a, seasoned security guy that wants to, fight hackers and keep nefarious ne'er-do-wellers out of your environment and away from your data.
Yeah.
You need to have that culture in your organization. And, I'm going to go so far as to say, if that culture isn't there already and you've tried to do what you can to change that and no one listens, well, maybe it's time to up your game and look around at another organization who is serious.
Or you
I'm
could
just going
try.
to go out there.
Yeah, that does make sense. But there's also things you can do internally to try to help change the culture. So Kai Rower, I'm not sure if any of you guys or either of you guys follow him on Twitter. It's just KAIROER on Twitter. He made a security culture framework and posts a whole bunch of really good slides and stuff that could be useful to help kind of bring about some internal change.
Okay. Let's look that up. Brian, you talk a while and I'm not going to listen, and I'm going to look that up. Wait, can you spell that, Megan?
How's that any different than normal?
KAIROER.
Oh, I spelled it as in rower. Sorry, Kai. Kai Rower blog, the home of security culture. It's rower.com, ROER.com, HTTP. Oh, HTTPS. Fancy. He's from Norway.
He's across the Salty Lake.
Yeah. I'm sorry, the Salty Lake. Okay. I used to say pond, but I guess Salty Lake is good too.
Right.
So while Boettcher is not listening to me, how do we so let's say that we can't convince the compliance guy to join the security front. Would it be magnitudes harder to get involved with, say, the next PCI draft and make the PCI requirements more stringent? It seems to me that if we're trying to get more secure, if we made the compliance frameworks more secure, that would help drive security.
Right, but then if you get it too difficult and raise the bar too high, then nobody would be compliant. They'd just be like, oh, it's not worth it, the cost, right? Yeah. And kind of write it off. Well, and then we're even worse than where we started.
Well, isn't that the cost of doing business? I mean, I know with PCI 3.0, they have included, certain, hardware changes. So like pause terminals now have to be tamper proof, and there have to be other things like that. I don't know the differences in the SSAE audits. I know that they've changed in the last few years. ISO added a few things. Would ISO be a best practice framework, or would that be a security framework? Because it's not a compliance thing. It's like one of those nice to haves.
I would say probably best practices, right?
Okay, so it's a best practice a security framework then, because it's one that people like, wow, we should really get to that point. And then it's like, well, it's a lot of work. So
right.
Maybe we shouldn't do it. It's one of those not all or nothing things like the compliance thing.
Right. I could have a Nintendo DS, but this ball and cup is kind of awesome.
Yeah, I was, yeah, I was gonna have a Rolls Royce, but my Nissan Leaf will just have to do, I guess.
You got 2 feet. Come on,
Yeah,
use them.
exactly.
Right.
I live on a hill. I'll just coast down to work, so that's cool. So, oh, you're back, Mr. Boettcher. I forgot. How did the blog go? How was that?
It's interesting. Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
couldn't find the slides though, or the presentation or whatever.
he
But
posted something on his Twitter account. Let me see, like 3 hours ago.
It says
Oh,
the Conference
dang.
of Culture, May 5th, 2015.
Oh, was it not a slide? Maybe it was a present, like it's a post. Okay. Where he talks about the process of building the framework. But what's interesting about Kai, right, is he takes principles from sociology and psychology and tries to turn it into building the secure culture in organizations. So it's one of the things after talking with like Mouse and Lost about at DerbyCon last year, where I'm like, oh crap, well, I think that's what I want to do is go into psychology, get this degree, and do something similar with it.
There you go, Mr. Boettcher. I did your job for you there, right there. Look in the chat window for the link there.
yeah, I'm there.
Ooh, my Google Foo. Yeah.
Google. Well, if they raise the bar too high, then it's going to be too hard to achieve those goals. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think what you're meaning is raising the, like, for example, your PCI, adding new things. That's not really raising the bar. They didn't make it harder. They just added stuff. They tried to modernize.
Well, when
Right.
when 2.1 came out, they hadn't had to deal with malware that's running on pause terminals, or people tampering with pause terminals. They didn't enter their minds when they were doing the compliance framework for that. Now they've seen that quite often. So, in an effort to, mitigate that threat, they have added that as a compliance requirement to make sure that terminals aren't.
Yeah. See, that's the problem. Compliance is geared to defend yesterday's threats. Okay.
Okay.
Right. So you're not trying to defend today's threats with compliance. It's all the stuff from yesterday. I mean, for the three of us, who in this virtual room uses antivirus?
Yeah, I don't use antivirus either.
I don't either, right? Because it doesn't work. Okay, so the signature-based focus of compliance is kind of the way we did it 5 years ago.
Sure.
It's not the way we secure our organizations today.
Sure.
Right? So that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's really broad. You have to do a crap ton of different things. You need this policy document. You need to, vet your users for this. You need to put antivirus on these machines. You need to, do a, this type of audit for all these things, quarterly or monthly, whatever. Everybody needs to review the document and refresh it, and that has to be documented in and of itself. So it's a lot of work there.
Yeah.
That may not be resources spent in the best way they can. So if you have a really, kick-ass security guru in your organization, they are probably going to be spending half of their time on compliance if you don't have dedicated compliance teams, right?
Sure.
So he's the guy who knows everything. So, well, we have to have him write these process documents for PCI, or we have to have him do, audit these particular changes for change control because of compliance. It kind of hinders their abilities, their knowledge, their intelligence, their innovation, their skills, their experience.
Mhm.
All of that goes towards, again, writing policy documents when they could be, defending the environment actively.
True. Very true. All right.
So,
Well,
and
you've got down here some recommendations, but I've got some nits to pick with one of these. So why don't you give us the recommendations for compliance versus security?
Well, my recommendations are to separate compliance and security in your organization. Make them completely different entities, different people. That way, security people can focus on security and compliance people can focus on compliance. They each have their jobs. They each do them well, I'm assuming. So let them do their jobs well. Don't let one hinder the other.
So what happens when Darth Compliance Weasel and Obi-Wan Security get together and fight?
Well, they're separated. They have different management chains, hopefully. They have different budgets, right?
Well, I hate to tell you, but it sounds like Darth Security Weasel is going to win against Obi-Wan Security.
Do you mean compliance? Darth Compliance?
Yeah, Darth Compliance will beat Obi-Wan Security every time.
Not if there's a wall between them.
Right. And they shouldn't be seen as or treated as the same either. So it's your job as a good security person to effectively communicate, this is why we need to be secure in addition to being compliant. It shouldn't be one over the other.
Sure. Okay.
Right. So you get something free if you're secure, and that's a lot of your compliance checkboxes go away.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of them. Leave that to the compliance team to get those things done.
So
right?
you could you say that, it's harder to stay compliant, but once you become secure, you don't have to do as much work to stay compliant. So it would behoove the compliance guy to want to be secure because, if you're keeping your head above water with compliance, with security, you're sitting in a lifeboat. You're not going to drown. Is that an apt? That's an apt.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works, baby. Oh. Okay. So how would you use compliance to your advantage? That's the second advantage that you've got there. How would you use compliance to your advantage if in A, you're already saying you should separate security and compliance?
Right. So if you feel as a security guy that you need a fancy whiz-bang tool or some sort of a application, whatever it is, you can hopefully justify the existence of that tool via compliance framework. Like, this is a requirement. This is how we're going to meet this requirement. We have to have this.
Okay.
Right.
It sounds a little bit like you want to kick compliance to the curb until you actually need compliance, and then you will use compliance to get stuff.
Well, it works both ways, right? If you get that tool that you need, then compliance can check the box, and security guys manage it and all that, and make sure it's up to date and blah blah blah.
You can take it further than just being, having the box sitting in a rack somewhere. Okay.
Yeah, then you both get the puppy.
Okay, very nice. All right. And C, you say educate management on the pitfalls of compliance. I would assume that we're going back to the, we're just barely keeping our head afloat. If you're secure, then you don't have to worry about sliding back as quickly with compliance.
You can get the frame of mind that we're compliant, we're good, right? That's the pitfall. It doesn't mean you're good. It means you're compliant, and that's it. So as you said before, you can win the contract if you're compliant. You can get more customers if you're compliant. Doesn't mean you're secure. Doesn't mean you're fighting off those phishing emails.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It just means you're compliant. And, the idea is to have conversations with management to say that, yes, we can achieve compliance, but we also need to be secure at the same time.
Okay. So Megan, you must have been in some meetings where, there's arguments between various groups, whether it be security or compliance guys, about a course of action. Have you ever been in a meeting where it's like the security guy says we need to do A, and the compliance guy is like, well, no, we don't really need to do that? Have you ever had anything contentious like that?
Actually, I've been kind of spoiled because no, I've never been in any of those types of meetings.
Oh, good. You're so lucky, because I know that we have.
Usually there's smaller companies where the director of compliance sometimes mostly knows what the heck he's doing security wise.
Right on.
So that's always been really nice.
Okay.
Another pitfall you could have is, you separate your environment into compliance zones and non-compliance zones, right? So you have your secure area that you focus on, and that's where you dedicate all your security efforts to. Since this other environment doesn't really fall under the compliance umbrella that you have set, let's put that on the back burner and we'll get to it when we can. And that area can act as a pivot point for hackers to establish control over, and then they have a better base of operation to go and attack where your prized possessions are in the compliance zone. So that's another pitfall you could get into.
So your suggestion for that is to not have a compliance and a non-compliance zone, just make everything at the same level?
No, I'm saying that from a compliance standpoint, focus on that compliance zone. That's your job. From a security standpoint, you need to take the organization as a whole. There is a risk in not paying attention to those zones of your operation that are not falling into the realm of compliance, right? And you have to take that risk into account. You have to secure those areas as well. Just because my laptop isn't part of the PCI zone doesn't mean it can't be a jumping point for hackers via remote access Trojan into my compliance zone, right?
Yeah, pretty nice. Well, I want to keep this, underneath 3 hours here, because apparently somebody's got to go play Diablo or something. So,
Well, no, I'm actually falling asleep because it's like 9:30 in Dallas now, and so that's usually when I start going reading and going to bed because I'm evidently 80. But
all right, blame the tiredness on the fact you're jet lagged and not that you're bored to tears. It's cool. So before we go though, Mr. Boettcher and I like to do takeaways, of course. So Megan, do you have any takeaways that you've gotten from this discussion here that you think maybe you learned something?
You didn't learn anything.
I know she's asleep. She's like, oh, great, I can go to bed.
No, I would say I really enjoyed the talk about the kind of symbiotic but kind of opposing nature of security versus compliance.
Okay.
And how we make it harder on ourselves than we actually need to.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Boettcher, how about you?
I'd say don't let compliance become a substitute for a good security strategy, right? So don't let compliance affect your goals to become a secure organization, right? And I realize that to become secure is a goal that'll never be reached, because it's nirvana or whatever. But you have a definition of what's comfortable in your mind to be, secure. So don't let compliance get in the way. Yeah. All right. Reach for those goals. If you want to do, if you're a packet monkey and you want to look at all the packets, and if Joe talks to Mary, that's bad, and they shouldn't be doing that on the wire, there's probably something going on, or you can detect data exfil in your environment and things, and you love to watch network traffic, and you put certificates on everybody and decrypt traffic to see what kind of nefarious activities going on. Go for it. That's not part of compliance, but that's good security. If you like to do the whole active defense thing, you're sticking artillery on every box and you have honeypots everywhere, that's good security too. But compliance, I don't think they have honeypots in there. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I don't think so. And then, of course, we talked to Michael a lot about logging. If your box is compromised, it should be in the logs.
Sure.
Go find it.
Yeah.
Look for it. That's good security. Okay. Compliance says you need to log. Security says you need to log the right things. Okay.
Exactly.
And that's my takeaway.
No, that's excellent. That was an excellent takeaway word. And that's just having logs isn't enough, is enough to be compliant, but having logs that are meaningful is security.
So by default, if you execute malware on your Windows machine, you will see absolutely nothing in the logs. I mean, that's compliant. Your machine is logging, but good malware, it's undetectable.
Yeah.
However, if you set the right things, if you follow the Windows logging cheat sheet, right, and you implement that, you'll see malware. You'll be able to detect it. Yeah. And then you'll be able to go to, you'll be able to see where command and control is. And then you'll be able to go to your SIEM and say, okay, who else went to command and control? Who else got infected in my environment? And that's good security.
Yep. Yeah, my takeaway is I'm going to use that Darth compliance thing. I think at some meeting soon, because that was a really good analogy for me. Yeah, and educating management on on why we should be secure versus compliance, I think was something that I didn't think about when in your recommendations. I thought that was really good. The thing I've got with that is you've got to make sure that one, you and the compliance guy kind of have to be on the same page with that and have to understand that. And I liked your idea that if you're getting something that allows you to be compliant, you can take that that checkbox device, be like a WAF or something like that allows you to be compliant, and you can actually make it so that you're more secure. So in that way, using compliance to your advantage is actually a good thing, and that's something I didn't think about myself. So that was good, Mr. Boettcher. Well done. So I think we need to go. I think that was a lot of good discussion there. Miss Wu, how would people get a hold of you if they wanted to?
Mostly Twitter at Totenkoph, TOTTENKOPH.
Okay. Mr. Boettcher, how would one get a hold of you should they wanted to get a hold of you?
Same thing, Twitter, at Boettcherpwned, BOETTCHERPWNED, and also BDS.podcast. We have a shared email account, you and I. So
that's right.
We do answer every email.
Yep.
So if you send us questions, you have any questions for us, you need some advice on something. I don't know if it'd be the right advice given, but in your situations, but we're here to help.
Yep. So bdspodcast@gmail.com. That would be that one. So I'm at Brian Brake on Twitter. Brian, BRYANBRAKE. We have an official Twitter at BrakeSec, BRAKE-SEC, SEC. We have a Facebook fan page at facebook.com/BreakingDownSec. Our website is breakingsecurity.com, BRAKEING security.com. We have a Tumblr. We've got Google Plus, LinkedIn. We have a Patreon. I appreciate everybody who gives to Patreon. I'd like to, again, thank our folks who won their DerbyCon tickets. We're looking forward to interviewing them at DerbyCon, the people who won the tickets. We raised $650 for Hackers for Charity, which was awesome.
Or we can just say hi. We don't
Yeah.
have to interview you if you don't want to be.
Look, they get as many non-alcoholic drinks from me as they want because they gave up some dough for a decent, an excellent cause. So all your non-alcoholic drinks are on me, sirs, for the first couple hours. I would
Until you turn in.
until I go to sleep at 8:45 after being jet lagged for the day. So yeah.
And by the way, Brian has no idea how to calculate time zones. So if you're there, he lives in Pacific time, so everything needs to be converted to Pacific time.
Look, I'm just gonna use GMT time, so that way everybody's confused. Okay, we'll just do it like that. See me at 1200 GMT or whatever. So yeah. So hey, you're actually speaking at DerbyCon, aren't you, Totenkopf there?
Yeah. Friday. First I'll be speaking with Ben on Pavlovian security, and then an hour after that, I'll be talking with Security Moe about learning through mentorship.
Okay, very cool. And
Yeah.
who was with the first talk you kind of cut out there? Was that Ben 10?
Oh yeah, Ben 10.
Okay, right on. Well, we'll definitely have to go and watch those, or sit out in the hallway and talk while you're doing it, and then watch it on video later.
Do that one.
Yeah, we'll do it like that. So no, I'll be front row for those talks. So. All right, everybody. That was it for the Breaking Down Security this week. We're hoping to have a pretty interesting interview next week, as long as I don't screw it up and mess up the time zones and days again. So if you are wanting to come back, please do. And that's been it for this week. Thanks, Megan, for showing up. Thank you, Mr. Boettcher, for making excellent show notes and just being here for me. So that's great.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. All right, that was
Bye-bye.
it this week. Have a good week.
Bye.
You can say goodbye again, Mr. Boettcher. I'll get that.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye-bye. That's call out for defensive security, by the way. All right, later, everybody.